So I'm gonna make my composition using human figures and a perspective in the background. Before I start, I pick the I choose my paper, and according to the size of paper, I take the ratio down and make little tiny squares for my rough draft. And then I get the magazines and see what images I like in the magazine. At this moment, I like this image. And the way I'm gonna use this image in my composition is by using the form of the image. I'm not gonna copy the person as a person of whole, but I'm gonna get a rough estimate of how they look and how to position their bodies on my picture. There was another picture I liked. I'm going to combine two pictures into one. I like this baby too. So I'm going to find a way to combine this baby with this image. And first I'm going to arrange or compose my picture on a rough draft, which I drew on an ordinary piece of paper which I have. So I drew the boy and the girl on the paper. Now I'm gonna draw the little girl's image, which I found and I liked, in the background. So now I added the baby in the background. Now I need to add either the perspective or 3 to 4 objects from observation. So, even though both these pictures have a different kind of background, I want to make this picture very special and unique and my very own. So what I'm going to do, instead of creating the background which is over there in the magazine, I'm going to make my own background. And I feel like I need to make an indoor living area of some kind. And I want to use maybe some of the objects from observation from my own house, and I want to add that to my drawing. So I'm going to see if I can incorporate the background of my house to my image. Over here I'm gonna draw the background, this part of it, the door and the dark part of it. It has two and I actually like the lighting of it because this part is very light and this part is very dark. It creates drama and interest in my picture. So I'm gonna go back. I added these objects, I added the background to my image, and I need to add 3 to 4 objects from observation. And I'm trying to see what to add. I could probably add a toy to this baby's picture. Maybe a pillow would be nice. I'm thinking of a flower pot, maybe a dresser, a light bulb maybe. So I'm thinking of what I'm gonna add to this picture, and what options do I have is that either I can look around or I can look in a magazine, which is also something which you can draw from. Hmm. So far I don't see anything much which attracts my attention. Mm. Maybe I can add a sofa. I see a sofa here. Maybe I can try adding that in the background. And then there's a flower vase over here, which is very tiny in the picture. Probably can't see it. So, in order to fit the criteria of we having three still life objects, I added a trunk instead of a couch because I felt the couch would make this space tighter and it would be hard to convince showing a couch over here, which feels like a tight space. And I added a plant in the background, which was, I don't know if you can see it, there's a yellow pot plant in my house. And then I added a flower pot which I got inspired, which I used from the magazine, and I feel like my composition is complete. Now I went ahead and shaded the parts which I saw were darker in my picture because I think that creates interest. So now remember, I do this on my rough draft and I can always change it on my final drawing. And I added a window in the background. As it is there in my house, I felt like that would, and now I can save it or I can eliminate it depending on what I need. Now what I feel at this moment is this part is heavy because there's a lot of details and contrast. This part is light. In order to make this part balanced out, what I can do is I can create pattern on this part. The pattern on this part will help me pull it down a little bit. I can make it darker or I can create a certain kind of pattern. But when I'm creating any pattern for that matter, I have to keep it in mind that it shouldn't take away from the main theme or most important part of my image, which is the human figures at this moment. Well, pattern is part two, but it should, look complete and it should look whole. So I'm gonna draw this on the bigger sheet of paper, and I have decided to use this as a pencil shading drawing. So I'm gonna create this into a complete artwork using only value and shading. So I have drawn and sketched my final project from this rough draft which I made. If I were you, I would give myself a whole complete class to be focused and to finish my project, to draw my project. And now that I have my basic drawing in, I'm gonna start shading it. So I have three objects from observation: this flower vase, this trunk, this plant, three human figures. I can add more objects if I need, but for my final composition, I feel like this is enough because I don't want to take away from my basic drawing or the main idea concept. This is the progress I've made on my work so far. Mommy. And I've shaded the background and I haven't touched the foreground yet. Once I have my background in, I'll start shading my foreground. So I added more details to the background. Added the trunk, completed the plant, finished the plant and the background. I haven't touched my human figures yet. because I want to finish the background to a certain extent and then add the human figure to it. I'm gonna keep my background light for the floor so that when I add the contrast to the human forms and so that when I add the contrast to the human forms, I have the right amount of interest on the subject matter. So this is what this artwork looks like right now. That with contrast to this is my rough draft, and this is my final artwork so far. So since this trunk is in the foreground of the picture, it has the depth. I kept the walls light in the front. This wall has a different shadow or different shade to it. The reason is because on the flat surfaces, depending on the angle of the surface, the light is going to change. And so the light is kind of coming from this side, a little bit from that side. In the evening, when I was drawing this particular drawing, when I was adding shades to it, it had the shadow. There was light right where I was working, and there was a shadow of the pillar right there. So I added that shadow of the pillar to this particular picture over here. This is the progress I've made on my work so far. Mommy. And I've shaded the background and I haven't touched the foreground yet. Once I have my background in, I'll start shading my foreground.